All right guys, I am telling you, I've been flying drones for years, but this thing is just a complete rush when you fly this for the first time. Even if you're just flying it in sports mode and not doing the full FPV manual, this is going to be a rush. So I feel like I've been waiting years for DJI to release a drone like this and really fully enter this FPV space. There's going to be people all over with different perspectives. Some people who have flown like racing drones for years and others who have probably never used a drone before. I kind of occupy this space of I've been using drones forever, but very limited on the full FPV or racing side. And I think that's really where most people are going to get excited about this. If you have limited use of drones, or especially with FPV drones, but you've had some experience with drones before, this is going to be absolutely awesome in just so many ways. All right, so let's talk hardware a little bit. So the drone itself is actually probably a little larger than I expected it to be. It's pretty much the same as like your DJI Mavic Air as far as your actual footprint. The difference is obviously it doesn't fold up. And then the propellers itself are going to be these 3 prop designs rather than 2 props that kind of fold into each other. So it will take a little bit more room in your bag, but other than that, not a big deal on that. It does have a decent amount of weight on it, especially when you put this battery brick in there, which is, look at the size of this. This is a huge battery for an FPV drone. However, how DJI integrated this where it's basically part of the actual drone, including the back feet, and it integrates so well with that design that it really works extremely well, and it's going to give you a little bit extra battery life than you would normally get on an FPV drone. So about 20 minutes, I would say. In about 12, the drone was asking me to start coming in, and so that is way longer than you would typically get on an FPV drone, but obviously not what you would be getting on your typical Mavic series. Another benefit to this battery integration is that it keeps the props really high off the ground. So I found I could take off in pretty tall grass and it didn't bother me at all. That's always been an issue with like a Mavic series drone. So really nice to see the design on this overall has kept it to a point where it's really easy to use. So the camera module is kind of located a little bit higher up on this drone. I like that because it keeps it out of the grass. Also, if you were to kind of crash the drone a little bit, it should kind of keep it out of the way. There's nothing actually guarding it though. So if you run this into a tree, it will probably do a lot of damage to it. I do see that it is actually user replaceable. There are 4 Allen screws on the front. You can swap that out. I have been told that they will sell camera modules. I am just not sure what the cost is right now, what kind of electronics are buried within that. So, but overall, the drone feels really stable, a lot of different swappable parts all over it actually, so it will be something that you can repair without having to buy the entire drone again. So the remote itself has also slimmed down a little bit from the typical FPV unit that you've been able to get for a little while from DJI. This antenna just kind of flips into place, so that's nice. There is a custom button right here that you can program up on the front. It also does have that pause button, or what we would call the emergency brake button on it as well, start, stop recording, and another customization which you can use to set presets for the gimbal angle on that one. And then your different mode dials, you can adjust the gimbal angle as well from this control, start, stop recording, and then your power button as well. So we can also do automatic landing on this as well by just holding this button down right here. So a lot of different options. Another thing that's pretty unique on this is that the remote itself comes spring-loaded into the center, kind of more like traditional drones from DJI. However, if you're flying FPV, you know that you probably want that remote stuck at the bottom right here, and you increase the throttle gradually. So it is fully adjustable inside of it. You have to peel off the back cover, and then you can adjust it all with an Allen wrench to get it into this mode that you would use for manual mode flying. So I have done that with this remote, and it works really well for flying in that way, but you do have to adjust it because it does come spring-loaded into that middle position right there. Now, the other really unique thing is this new remote control, and at first, I didn't think I would use this ever. It looked like more of a beginner remote, and I couldn't really understand why I would want to fly it like this. I'm going to tell you that after loading this on, if you are flying in anything except manual mode, so the sports mode or regular mode, this remote is where it is at. It allows you to basically do everything by movement on here, and it will follow your position. And flying like this, especially with this kind of sports mode FPV where it banks on you, this is amazing. This is the way you should be flying a drone like this in the sports mode. So I highly recommend picking this up and then keeping this for more of your manual FPV flying. Man, I did not think that I would like this, but the more I use it, I just fell in love with this remote controller. Now, DJI is also including their FPV goggles. These are the version 2 right here, which is included, and you can actually buy these separately because people get these for any FPV drone because they are so good. And bonus points for DJI for actually making them look amazing as well. These are just unbelievable. So you're getting 810p, so just over 720p quality at 120 frames per second refresh rate. And that's going to help a lot because if you are flying these things at 60 to 90 miles per hour, weaving in and out of trees, having low latency, having just amazing refresh rates on this is going to make a huge difference. So these are absolutely amazing on here. Now, this is the first time I've really been in FPV goggles for more than about 10 minutes, and I kind of had a hit and miss experience for me. So first of all, the lenses themselves are adjustable left and right, but not up and down. And I found that they sat a little bit low for my eyes. And what that meant is I kept pulling them up. And that meant that the actual nose rest was no longer resting on my nose. And some of these eye cups right here were kind of digging into the bones under my eyes a little bit. And so all of the weight of the goggles, and they are remarkably light. They look like they would be heavier than they are, but they are remarkably light. But it started to feel a bit heavy after a little while because it just wasn't resting correctly on my nose. So a lot of that pressure was just either on my eyes or my head itself. Also, I'm not one to get motion sickness, but after about 20 minutes with my head inside of this, racing in and out at 60 miles an hour, I began to get some pretty severe motion sickness on this. So the way that DJI designed the remote control, you can't actually use your phone on this. I wish they had an attachment that you could, because if you're wanting to fly this for hours, and I'm telling you, you will, and you do get motion sickness on this, there's no way to just throw your phone onto the remote control and use it that way. You have to use the goggles. So for me, I was good most of the time, but as soon as that battery was about ready to die, my motion sickness was catching up with me a little bit, and I really needed to land it and take a break. So I'm not sure if that will get better with time as I use it, but if you're somebody especially who's just going to be picking this up for fun, I think you should know about it. Even if you're someone who doesn't struggle with motion sickness, you might start feeling it after a while. And I do wish DJI had the option of just using a normal remote controller with a phone unit on it, just for those of us who struggle to wear this long term. So the camera itself is a 4K camera, 60 frames per second. It uses the rock-steady image stabilization that DJI uses in a lot of their action cameras. I would say quality itself is very similar to their action camera, so really good as long as you have pretty good light in there, and it works really well, but not really a step up from other options on the market right now. Now, what is really cool is that you do have manual control over all of your settings, white balance, image control, all of that kind of stuff, and then you even have log modes as well. So you have Cine Like D on there as well. Now, one thing that's really cool about this drone, which if you've used any other FPV drone, this is a huge step up. This drone has one camera, and what you are seeing from your headset is that one camera on here. Most FPV drones have two cameras, one that's synced to the goggle and then the other that you use for video recording. The advantage here is that what you are seeing in your head is coming from this amazing camera. So the image itself looks amazing even when you're flying it. Now the image stabilization is applied after it's been recorded, so you're not actually seeing it in stable motion, but you are seeing just amazing image quality overall. And then the other advantage is because you're seeing it like that, it is really easy to shoot manual. So you can plug in your settings and you're going to see exactly what the camera sees. So that's a huge advantage for being able to get all manual settings for anything that you do want. Now I did find that I ended up shooting a lot in auto exposure on here, more than I've ever shot in my entire life. And the reason is because if you're flying this thing and you're going into the sun, the exposure might be great, and then you turn around and it gets really dark. So I found that it was just easier to shoot in auto exposure, and I found it to work really well. So it was smooth and compensating for dark and light areas. And then that meant that if I turn into a dark area, the camera would adjust the exposure and I wouldn't have to worry about wrecking into a tree or something like that that would have been too dark otherwise. So overall auto exposure worked really well and the camera performance is awesome. So I'm really glad that DJI actually included log recording on this, because usually I'm using that Cine-like deep profile. However, in this, because what you're seeing in the goggles is the image from the camera, it is a little bit harder to try and navigate through objects in that low contrast log mode. I wish the DJI had done what most monitors have and have a LUT that you can load onto the monitor itself. So it is recording the log profile, but what you're seeing in the goggles is more of a standard profile, so that you still have color information, you still have contrast and all that kind of stuff. So that would have been nice on there. I ended up not using log quite as much as I normally would just because of that. Now, if you are using this for filmmaking, a couple things that I would keep in mind here. So first of all, it can record 4K 60, but there is no 4K 24 option, which I found a little bit weird on that one. Usually when I'm filming like these high-speed drone chases, I would be recording in real time and maybe even speed them up a little bit in post. So having 4K 24 would mean that I could lower my shutter speed and get more light into the camera itself. Because it was stuck at 4K 60 meant that as I was nearing evening and wanted to keep my ISO a little bit lower, I might be forced to kind of increase it a little bit to get that shutter speed higher. The other thing I would keep in mind, this is a 150-degree view, so very ultra wide on here. In fact, you can actually see the propellers a little bit in the shot. However, there is an anti-distortion filter for this, and it kind of crops in a little bit, and I would use it normally anyway, and that kind of got rid of that propeller in the shot area. So if you're using it for filmmaking, definitely activate that, or you're going to want to crop in post. The other thing to keep in mind is there's no automatic flying mode. So something you might be used to from DJI's other drones is being able to track objects or do like a circle pattern around an object. So none of that is here. It's going to be all kind of manual flying as you go. Nothing unexpected. I mean, these are things that we would typically see in action style drones or racing drones. So, but just things to keep in mind in case you're using it for filmmaking. This is not going to replace your Mavic when it comes to other kinds of shooting. So when it comes to actually flying this thing, man, this thing is just insane fun right here. So within 2 minutes of having it up in the air, I had this thing in sports mode, whipping in trees, activated manual mode within about a day or two, and was able to really do some really cool stuff with this drone that I've never done before. And so overall, this is just a really, really fun toy to play with. Do keep in mind a couple of things though. This does not have obstacle avoidance, so you can go full head on into a tree. It does, however, have a few sensors, which will warn you if anything is close by and slow you down a little bit, something that you don't typically have on FPV drones. So really cool right there. Also, something really unique and awesome is the full emergency stop on this. So you can actually just press a button right here, and even if you are flying full manual, upside down, whatever, you hit that button and it will course correct you and it will stop the drone and hover for a while so you can regain your position. So if you're going 90 miles an hour into the tree, it might not stop you in time. However, for normal flying, this could be a lifesaver right here, and it made a huge difference for me. There's one time it came a little bit close, hit that button, and then I was absolutely where I needed to be, got my control back, and then was able to navigate back where I wanted to. So really cool feature on that. And then the range on this is way better than what you would typically see on FPV drones. I will say in my area that I was flying in, I typically have interference issues with DJI drones. After about 2,000 to 2,500 feet, I was getting cutouts depending on where I was going, but usually if you're in a low interference area, you can go for miles on these. So really good range on there, but if you're in a high interference area, maybe a couple thousand feet, and you might start seeing occasional cutouts. The good news is that even if you lost signal, it does have a return to home function, so it will find its way back to where you take off. Really cool feature that we get from other DJI drones that other FPV units don't typically have. And then we also have the ability to find my drone. So if you do crash it somewhere, it'll report that signal back, and you can hopefully find it on a map inside the app. So a lot of really cool functionality on this, and it just made flying this, oh my gosh, it was just so much fun. All right, so we got to talk about the price, because that $1,300, this is expensive for a little toy right here. But a couple things. First of all, these goggles are some of the highest end goggles that you can possibly get. I think they sell for about $550 just by themselves. So being able to get them in this kit is a huge addition right there. But do keep in mind that you're getting some of the highest end goggles on the market right there. Also, the remote control giving you the kind of communication that is going to let this travel for miles without signal cut out with the remote is just insane. And then in addition to that, you're getting a drone with a built-in 4K 60 camera system. Usually you would have to buy that separately. So I think when you add all of this together, especially giving you features that no other FPV drone gives you, like this extended range, like being able to see through the camera perspective, return to home, safety features, all kinds of stuff like this in a really cool unit. It is worth the price, but it does mean that this entire kit together is going to be a bit more expensive than if you were to go with some other units. So this is the drone for me that I have been wanting DJI to make, and that is because the FPV drones are so much fun. I've wanted to get into them so badly, but having absolutely no safety features, having to start from scratch, build these things on your own, not knowing how to build these things or tearing them apart, just kind of kept me on the sidelines for years. Having this entire unit cohesively work together with all of DJI's typical controls and safety features and return to home and their amazing quality and being able to see it through the camera system just made this an entirely different level of drone. I mean, to me, this is kind of like the 911 of cars right here. It is so much fun to drive, and it is just filled with features that you could use it as a daily driver or just use it for fun at a racetrack. And it fills just about everything that I've wanted from an FPV drone in here. Not enough to replace my Mavic for when I want those more stable and tracking flights right there, but definitely a drone I'm adding to my kit, and also what I'll probably be flying for fun on the weekends. So feel free to hit me up if you guys have any more questions down below. Hit me up on IG or anything like that. Hope you guys are doing well. I'll see you soon in a new video.